Tonight, a surprising concession from Ukraine's president. He says he's willing to resign for peace. A show of force from Russia. And of support in Canada as the war hits the 3-year mark. Why so many Canadians are angry with Wayne Gretzky.
He's abandoned Canada.
The moves that have some questioning his loyalty. The Canadian company putting driverless trucks on the road.
The robots are going to be much better than humans.
Test driving the technology. Even though James's hands are close to the steering wheel, this truck is being controlled fully autonomously. But just how safe are self-driving semis?
From CBC News, this is The National with Ian Hennemensing.
Tonight, world leaders are preparing to gather in Ukraine for a peace summit on the 3rd anniversary of Russia's war. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is expected to be there alongside the Ukrainian president, who's trying his hand at public negotiations with the U.S. as it engages with Russia. Volodymyr Zelenskyy said today he's willing to resign from his position as president in exchange for peace in Ukraine or NATO membership. This as Russia unleashed more than 200 drones on Ukraine overnight in a large-scale attack. Chris Brown is in Kyiv and shows us the damage.
Hardly anyone in Ukraine believes Vladimir Putin wants peace, especially after Russia launched the largest drone attack of the war overnight on Kyiv and other cities. But Donald Trump claims he does. And so on Sunday, President Volodymyr Zelenskyy simultaneously tried to repair his strained relationship with the U.S. president while laying down some new red lines. We are partners, and I want Trump to be on our side, said Zelenskyy, after Trump called him a dictator. But Zelenskyy also said Ukraine would not agree to Trump's demand to hand over a reported $500 billion in rights to critical minerals for previous U.S. military assistance Trump now considers a loan. In simple words, it's a loan with 100% interest, said Zelenskyy. When the U.S. sells weapons to Israel, Qatar, or Saudi Arabia, do they earn 100% profit? The back and forth over the terms of peace is being followed closely by injured soldiers, like Sergei. A Russian artillery shell ripped apart his leg. 15 centimeters of bone is missing. I became a disabled veteran so that our country and my child can live and feel safe, he said, rather than waiting for our neighbor to attack again. Of course, we need security guarantees. Another soldier from this Kyiv rehab clinic, who goes by the moniker Historian, had his ankle shattered by a Russian drone in December. Trump is mistaken, and Putin will definitely lie to him, he said. But if Trump pulls U.S. support, he says it will have far-reaching consequences. This clinic is run by an American volunteer, Hushan White, who's lived in Ukraine for 30 years. She says many here feel despair at what she sees as U.S. pressure tactics.
The manipulation and the lies and just how Ukrainians are being used for the gain of other people.
And something else Zelenskyy said, Ian, that he would be willing to step down as president if that would guarantee peace. Russia has long wanted Zelenskyy out, and Donald Trump has suggested Zelenskyy is illegitimate because Russia's attacks have deferred national elections.
And Chris, Monday is the 3-year anniversary of the war. Zelenskyy is also touting some major developments to mark that occasion.
Yes, he's hosting a major gathering of European leaders here in Kyiv, and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is expected to join them too. With many here now seeing the U.S. as at best an unreliable ally, or even at worst a potential partner of Vladimir Putin, this will be a pivotal moment for European security. Ian.
Chris Brown in Kyiv tonight. Across this country, Canadians showed their support for Ukraine, holding rallies as part of a global day of action. And as Vanessa Lee shows us, many stood shoulder to shoulder with Ukrainians who now call Canada home.
A sea of blue and yellow right across Canada in a show of solidarity with Ukraine.
There is an entire generation of Ukrainian children, like my son, from whom Russia has stolen a peaceful childhood.
Nazar Nobanovsky is 15. He came to Canada just before the war began and worries about his grandmother, who is still in Kyiv.
Can you help us more, please? Like, we're very grateful for all the support, but we need a bit more because our situation right now is not that good.
Many Canadians of all backgrounds are standing behind the war-torn country as it defends its sovereignty.
No, I'm not Ukrainian. You don't need to be Ukrainian to know what's right.
Since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Canada, which has one of the world's largest Ukrainian populations outside of that country, has committed over $19.5 billion in assistance and has welcomed more than 300,000 Ukrainians.
I have all my family left there, and I was the only one who came because everybody else has to stay there, and just trying to live day to day, you're super stressed.
Canadians are also on the ground in Ukraine providing humanitarian aid. Calgarian Paul Hughes founded a group known as Hugs, helping Ukraine grassroots support. He says nothing will stop him from helping those who have been displaced, not even a Russian drone attack earlier this month that destroyed the Children's Resource Center he helps run in Kharkiv.
This is unfinished business, so we can't stop. We can't stop now. We're not in that position. We don't have that luxury. Ukraine doesn't have that luxury.
A country refusing to give up, receiving unwavering support from around the world. Vanessa Lee, CBC News, Montreal.
Israel says it's delaying the handover of more than 600 Palestinian detainees who were due to be exchanged with Hamas this weekend. This is how Hamas released 6 Israeli hostages yesterday. Today, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Hamas is humiliating hostages and called this a staged ceremony for propaganda. Now, Israel says it won't release those hundreds of Palestinians until next week's final exchange is guaranteed without ceremony. The first phase of the ceasefire deal ends March 1st. There's new concern tonight for Pope Francis after the Vatican announced that he's dealing with early signs of kidney failure in addition to pneumonia. Jennifer Yoon shows us Catholics around the world turning to their faith in the hope that he'll recover.
A desperate prayer for Pope Francis in his hometown cathedral where he led a congregation for 15 years. I'm feeling sad because everything that happens to him feels like it's happening to me, says this parishioner. The 88-year-old Pope remains in critical condition, battling double pneumonia in hospital for over a week now, and asking Catholics for their prayers.
Papa Francesco.
And they are praying at the Vatican, in Nairobi, Kenya, and here in Canada too, home to more than 10 million Catholics.
I'm crying. He's our Papa. We love him.
I think he's opened the church a lot, made a lot of reforms, attracted a lot of young people back into the Catholic faith.
This Innu man says he returned to the church, in part because the Pope showed such remorse over residential schools.
Coming to Canada and apologizing was a big part of the reconciliation, I would say.
Doctors are being guarded about the Pope's chances of recovery. He hasn't had any new respiratory crises since Saturday, but blood tests show early signs of kidney failure. In New York, a cardinal saying what officials in Rome aren't.
Our Holy Father, Pope Francis, is in very, very fragile health and probably close to death.
Others say he still could recover. He's alert, well-oriented, and getting medication.
They have him on antibiotics or treatment, whatever the infectious organism is. It could be flu, it could be COVID, it could be a bacterial pneumonia.
It'll take some time to see if those treatments will turn the tide. Catholics around the world hoping their prayers can help too. Jennifer Yoon, CBC News, Toronto.
In Germany tonight, exit polls suggest the far-right AfD party has doubled its support since the last election, the best showing for a party that extreme since the Second World War. That could help the first-place Christian Democratic Union. With an estimated 29% of the vote, opposition leader Friedrich Merz seems to be on track to be chancellor. but he'll have to decide whether to join forces with the more extremist AFD, led by Alice Weidel. Mers had ruled that out, but the AFD has now leapt to 20% support.
Everyone who's voting for AFD want a change in politics when it comes to illegal migration and for economy and energy.
All of that squeezing out the current Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, and his left of center Social Democrats. Next, votes will be officially counted and potential alliances will be tested.
Now we will have negotiations in the upcoming days and weeks. The most important question is, do we have a common approach to the problems of Germany?
With Europe's largest economy at a political crossroads, the question now is how sharp the turn will be. Candidates in the race to replace Justin Trudeau will face off in 2 televised debates starting tomorrow, in French on Monday, then English the following night. As JP Tasker reports, it's a chance for the contenders to gain some ground on the presumed frontrunner.
Liberal leadership contender Chrystia Freeland is trying to hold off a Mark Carney coronation.
I'm ready to fight for Canada. I'm ready to fight for you.
Releasing a new ad that plays up her prairie roots and her tough early life on the family farm.
You learn you have to do things for yourself to be independent, that it's okay to challenge authority.
Freeland is facing challenges of her own in this race to replace Justin Trudeau. Carney has a commanding lead in money and endorsements. He's pulled in $1.9 million in donations. 83 Liberal MPs are backing his candidacy, and he's drawing big crowds.
Who is ready to stand up for Canada with me?
While Freeland has released a flurry of policy proposals,
we are on the side of rules and borders and not bullies.
Her figures are a fraction of Carney's, with about $600,000 raised so far in 26 MP endorsements. Now the two, along with candidates Karina Gould and Frank Baylis, will face off in 2 debates. One in French on Monday and another in English on Tuesday.
This is the moment for Freeland to punch through.
This political watcher says the debates are Freeland's chance to revive her stalled campaign. The stakes are lower for Carney.
I think his lead is probably significant enough that he doesn't have to come out and blow the doors off the place.
The debates come as polls show the Liberals are back in contention after months in the doldrums.
We've gone from, the Conservatives being able to win 230 seats to now it's an open question whether they could actually win a majority government.
The threat of American tariffs has scrambled the electoral equation, says this pollster.
It's much more about the threat that Donald Trump is posing to me, my life, my family.
The winning Liberal candidate will be announced on March 9th, and they'll have an important decision to make. Call an election right away or risk bringing back Parliament to take on Trump in this tariff fight. JP Tasker, CBC News, Ottawa.
You can catch both the French and English debates on CBC News Network. David Cochran and Rosemary Barton will provide analysis and cover the post-debate scrums. That is Monday and Tuesday beginning at 8 Eastern. U.S. federal workers are bracing for more firings after receiving an emailed ultimatum. The demand: list their accomplishments for the week or lose their jobs. It's part of Donald Trump's plan to slash the government with help from Elon Musk. Katie Simpson has the fallout.
With every passing day, Elon Musk appears to become even more emboldened, comfortable enough for this unusual display. His purge of the federal government now expanding and intensifying, he says, by order of the president. Announcing on social media Saturday, all federal employees will shortly receive an email requesting to understand what they got done last week. Failure to respond will be taken as a resignation. Hours later, millions of workers reportedly receiving a notice saying, please reply to this email with approximately 5 bullets of what you accomplished last week and CC your manager. The deadline to respond set for Monday at 11:59 p.m. Eastern.
I don't think that's a big deal, but people are saying, oh, you shouldn't do those kind of things.
Republicans on the Sunday political talk show circuit offered up plenty of support for Musk and the cuts.
He is literally the best entrepreneur we've had in our lifetime, and he's doing it for free, and he's taking an unbiased look saying these programs make no sense. Let's save the taxpayer dollars and get our house in order.
But Musk's latest order is being met with some resistance. Employees at the FBI, the State Department, and the Department of Defense are being told not to respond to the email for now.
It is illegal, and the actions he's taking are illegal, and we need to shut down this illegal operation.
As fired employees clear out their desks, more lawsuits and legal challenges are expected. All of it prompting one Republican to plead for some humanity.
These are real people. These are real lives. These are mortgages. It's a false narrative to say we have to cut and you have to be cruel to do it as well. We can do both.
Thousands more people are expected to be fired this week. The Pentagon is the next big target. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
Wayne Gretzky is facing criticism tonight for seeming to favor the U.S. men's hockey team while acting as Canada's honorary captain at the Four Nations face-off. As Sam Sampson explains, this backlash is fueled by his ties to Donald Trump, who keeps threatening Canada with tariffs and annexation.
Emerging from Team USA's bench, Wayne Gretzky throws the American team a thumbs up before representing Canada as the team's honorary captain. Despite a Canadian win, Gretzky's actions hit a sore spot.
He couldn't even be bothered to wear the Team Canada jersey.
Wayne Gretzky is a sainted figure in this country for good reason. He's the greatest hockey player in the sport that we care the most about. But how close he is to Donald Trump at this moment, and him being chosen as an honorary captain for this event, those two things didn't add up for me.
Gretzky has spent time at U.S. President Donald Trump's home in Mar-a-Lago. He had a prime seat at the inauguration. Trump has even floated Gretzky should run for Prime Minister of Canada, soon to be Governor of Canada, a nod to Trump's desire to make Canada the 51st state. The NHL says its decision to make Gretzky Canada's honorary captain is because he's one of the greatest and most respected players in the history of the game. And he's a proud born and raised Canadian. Gretzky hasn't commented.
The silence from Wayne Gretzky, I think, is disappointing for a lot of hockey fans.
Tyler Yaremchuk was at the Four Nations game and covers the Edmonton Oilers.
These players are going to have their politics, but when it's Wayne Gretzky and he's supporting Donald Trump in this way publicly, that's where it gets disappointing because he's held to such a higher standard.
Especially in Edmonton.
He was the franchise.
Gretzky won 4 Stanley Cups with the Edmonton Oilers. He's part of this city's cultural fabric. But that could change. Hockey fan Grant Preet has more than 7,000 signatures on a petition to change the name Wayne Gretzky Drive.
He's abandoned Canada, and I don't think that we should be, treating him as a hero by having things named after him.
A name change would have to get city approval. A cultural change would take a lot more. Sam Sampson, CBC News, Edmonton.
One of Wayne Gretzky's greatest hockey records, once thought unmatchable, is tonight a little closer to falling.
Here's Ovechkin! Got it!
That's Alex Ovechkin netting his 3rd goal this afternoon against the Edmonton Oilers. The hat trick bringing the Washington Capital forwards' career goal count to 882, just 12 goals away from tying Gretzky's record of 894. It's widely expected Ovechkin will surpass that before the end of this NHL season. Some Hyundai owners are speaking out after the paint on their cars started to peel.
It's kind of embarrassing.
CBC News investigates why it's happening over and over again.
I don't feel protected as a consumer.
There are growing concerns the oil and gas industry is influencing what kids learn about climate change.
I noticed a lack of any kind of collective action or systemic change.
And an ugly dog gets a big award.
She's definitely got star quality when it comes to the silver screen.
We're back in 2. An American Airlines flight from New York to Delhi is now safely in Rome after security concern forced it to land. It was escorted there by the Italian Air Force. Law enforcement cleared the aircraft and investigated the threat. The plane and its crew will stay in Rome overnight and continue to Delhi on Monday. Angry Hyundai owners are going public tonight over a paint defect that's causing large chunks to peel off some vehicles. Ithil Musa looks at why and the demands for answers.
When Armando Tusi bought his brand new Hyundai Sonata in 2016, he never imagined it would look like this in less than 10 years.
It's kind of embarrassing.
Tusi says he's tried contacting Hyundai Canada and his local dealership, but he says
no one wants to take ownership, no one wants to take accountability.
According to Hyundai Canada's warranty program, paint is only covered for 3 years or 60,000 kilometers. This auto expert, who's seen photos of Tusi's car, says paint on vehicles should last much longer.
I believe the paint job should last for as long as you own the vehicle.
The culprit says this expert is likely delamination or the loss of adhesion.
The paint consists of 4 coatings, 4 layers of paint. And if they're not applied properly or it's the incorrect formulation, one will actually peel away from the other layer.
Peeling, flaking.
Hyundais with peeling paint have been reported across the globe. And curiously, nearly all of them are white, with thousands of drivers sharing their experiences online, including this Australian.
The other day, a child was walking past the car and said to their mum, what's wrong with that lady's car?
The paint on Nixon's used 2015 hatchback started to peel in late 2019, but getting help fixing it has been impossible, she says.
I don't feel protected as a consumer.
Hyundai Canada says vehicles experiencing manufacturing paint issues are extremely rare, and Hyundai vehicles undergo rigorous testing to meet industry standards. Hyundai USA is offering a white paint warranty extension for certain models. When Go Public reached out, Hyundai Canada said some models sold in Canada are also eligible. Still, owners are not just embarrassed to be seen in these vehicles, they're angry. In Quebec, a proposed class action lawsuit has been filed against the automaker, but that will take time. Idil Musa, CBC News, Toronto.
Our Go Public stories come from you. If you have a tip for the team to investigate, send an email to gopublic@cbc.ca. A Toronto startup is vying to be the first company to put fully autonomous trucks on the road.
Our trucks will have no human on board, and they will be much safer than human drivers.
The AI-guided trucks, but not everyone's on board.
I don't think it's a good idea.
But how safe is it? We'll get in to find out.
I was just in a plane crash. Oh my God.
And how last week's terrifying crash is bringing up memories of a similar accident.
There aren't a lot of experiences in life where you truly believe that this is going to be the end.
The National breaks down the stories shaping our world. Next. Environmental advocates are sounding an alarm over the influence of the fossil fuels industry on what Canadian students learn about energy, climate, and the environment. As Deanna Sumanak-Johnson tells us, a new report points to classroom resources they say are funded by oil and gas companies.
This recently retired teacher says she was happy to use materials on climate change provided by a third-party organization.
It has the government of Alberta's logo on it.
But Tylene Appel says she noticed something she found suspect.
The materials focused on, say, individual actions, like wearing a sweater to stay warm. I noticed a lack of any kind of collective action or systemic change.
A new report by the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment alleges that the oil and gas industry is subtly influencing climate change education, in part by funding environmental organizations that give presentations, materials, and field trips to schools.
You will see occasionally references to the burning of coal, oil and gas as a driver of climate change, but the role of the industry is downplayed.
The report also calls out industry for so-called greenwashing.
Some of these companies fund tree planting initiatives. How's this a bad thing?
Imperial Oil is promoting tree planting. Tree planting is wonderful, but we also know that this industry driving the climate crisis is having a devastating impact on forests globally.
The companies named in the report either declined interview requests or did not respond. But an organization that supplies materials to Alberta schools denied being influenced by fossil fuel funders. In a statement, Inside Education says, our educational approach is centered around fostering critical thinking, not promoting a specific agenda.
The report's authors are calling on all levels of government to get involved in funding and providing high-quality climate education for students whose lives will be impacted by climate change. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
Now it's time to dig deeper into the stories shaping our world. A survivor of a fiery plane crash is offering support to the passengers of Monday's shocking flight, the plane that flipped over.
To overcome the PTSD that came with it, to be honest, a lot of years of therapy.
But first,
we are at the cusp of launching a product where our trucks will have no human on board.
The Toronto-based startup getting ready to roll out a fleet of trucks with no drivers. But are they safe?
It's unreasonable to expect it to be perfect.
So what are they like on the road? We get an exclusive ride inside one of these trucks driven by AI. Interstate 45 connecting Dallas and Houston. And this is a fully loaded transport truck controlled completely by an onboard computer with no human hands on the wheel.
All the decision is, in a fraction of a second. So it's superhuman, right, compared to what we can do.
What does it mean for safety on the roads?
If we don't deploy this technology, many lives are going to be lost.
This technology is going to have crashes. It's unreasonable to expect it to be perfect.
Are you ready to share the road with transport trucks controlled by AI with no one at the wheel? How do you feel about that?
I'm not really for that. I don't think it's a good idea.
We came here to the headquarters of Wabi in Toronto to find out more about their plan to upend the trucking industry. So tell me what's going on here.
So what you see in our Toronto office is the majority of our AI team, mostly scientists.
Raquel Urtasun is the founder and CEO. She's a University of Toronto professor, came here from Spain via the tech industry in the US. Urtasun says Ontario is becoming a world-renowned center for AI excellence.
The Wabi Driver is a single AI system that is both modular and interpretable, which means we can trace every choice it makes.
Wabi is vying to become the first in the world to launch a fleet of fully autonomous transport trucks on a public highway.
This is a tremendously exciting moment for the company and for me in particular. I've been, working in self-driving for almost 2 decades, and this is the moment that we are at the cusp of launching a product where, our trucks will have no human on board, and they will be much safer than human drivers. So it's really, really exciting times for us.
Some influential companies are betting big on this Canadian startup, almost $400 million big. Uber, Volvo, and Porsche are among the investors. Wabi has competitors, but none, it says, who are using something called generative AI. What does that mean? But this is all machine-generated.
All is machine-generated.
Simulations.
We can simulate any time of the day, any condition. We can simulate the sun shining, any safety-critical situation, accidents that are unavoidable.
The company says its artificial intelligence software can teach itself to adapt to infinite situations that might happen on the road. So you can set this up, for example, like a dog suddenly running across the street?
That's right. And you can set, it's generative AI, so it can generate automatically.
The alternative? Needing millions of kilometers of test drives so the computer can see and remember how to react. Something Wabi says would take years to complete. And this technological approach, this use of AI, generative AI, I guess, is unique to this company for driving?
Exactly. So Wabi is the provider of this technology, is the leader, globally of this technology. This technology can really finally solve and create driving systems that are much better than humans.
How many times have you ridden in this?
I don't know, so many, as much as I can.
Wabi invited us down to Texas for a ride. The first time the company has allowed journalists in its self-driving trucks. Along with us, what's called a safety driver and his colleague collecting data.
And today we have 40,000 pounds behind us.
We actually do?
Yes.
And what is that cargo right now?
I think it's water today, yes, for the testing.
These are the eyes of Wabi's AI. Radar sensors, LiDAR, which uses lasers, and video cameras. You can see the radar and LiDAR images on the top of the screen, the camera on the bottom. The data streaming into a computer, which is, metaphorically, in the driver's seat. So here we are on I-45 going about 100 kilometers an hour, heading from Dallas to Houston. And even though James's hands are close to the steering wheel, this truck is being controlled fully autonomously by the computer that's just behind me.
So James is instructed to, his hands are gonna be next to the wheel, but he's not gonna be touching the wheel whatsoever. And it's always to be very attentive. If there is, for whatever reason, needs to intervene, he's really on it.
Will he have to do that?
He shouldn't. Let's see.
How often has the safety driver had to take over?
Yeah, it's very rarely.
Very rare. As we take the on-ramp to the highway in full autonomous mode, the computer detects a transport truck in the lane behind us and calculates whether it's safe to merge. It is.
The car behind us was doing some weird stuff.
So what happened? This was a slightly more challenging scenario. A car passing us cuts in front, the truck's computer reacts.
The car was doing some weird stuff and didn't understand well what's happening, so he decided to slow down to give himself more room.
Imagine a world where hundreds of self-driving trucks are making thousands of decisions on a highway near you. Tassin says we're almost there. For a lot of us, the idea of a driverless semi-trailer truck on the highway is kind of scary. What do you say to people who find it unnerving?
Yeah, so I think it's very important that we build and we earn the trust of the public, right? And this is through being transparent, as well as by people seeing and experiencing our product, as well as before deploying. It's very important to really provide a scientific safety case proving that indeed this technology is safer than a human. If we don't deploy this technology, many lives are going to be lost. And with this technology, many lives are going to be safe. And that's important for people to think about that, it's our duty to actually, provide extra safety to our roads.
In other words, self-driving vehicles aren't going to fall asleep at the wheel or drive drunk. But when they're involved in a crash, no matter what the reason, they make the news.
This Cruise robotaxi entered the intersection on a green light when a Dodge Charger plowed into the self-driving car.
Case in point, this collision in San Francisco involving a robotaxi. And this happened to one of Wabi's competitors. The video of their self-driving truck hitting a highway barrier was leaked and widely viewed. So how safe will self-driving trucks be? We put that question to Phil Koopman, a professor at Pittsburgh's Carnegie Mellon University and an expert on autonomous vehicles. It feels to me like whether it's a driver at the wheel or a computer at the wheel, there are going to be accidents, there are going to be fatalities. So with these self-driving trucks, what's going to happen when we have the first fatal crash?
That's an important question. To be clear, this technology is going to have crashes. It's unreasonable to expect it to be perfect. And so when you say safe, you shouldn't say it's perfectly safe because there's no such thing. You have to say it's acceptably safe.
So even if it is only 1 or 2 or 10 trucks early next year without drivers, will they at least be safe?
The thing is, nobody really knows. So the companies will tell you, of course, we'll be safe. And they hopefully are doing everything they can to ensure safety. But at some point, you put the truck on the road, you see how it turns out. And the trickiness with this technology is that the average miles will probably be quite safe when nothing unusual is going on. The hard part for this technology is that unusual rare events, we call them edge cases, can trip up the technology. And then it's really hard to say what's going to happen. And surprises are the thing that matter for safety. So that's the big question. How will they handle surprises?
And so, as Professor Koopman asks, how much risk will people consider acceptable? What impact will self-driving technology have on the trucking business in terms of safety and efficiency and jobs? you want a sense of how big the trucking industry is, we'll just take a look around here. This is about a 15-minute drive away from Wabi's Dallas operation. And we thought we'd ask some of the drivers how they feel about self-driving trucks. Troy Duboclet from New Orleans says he's nervous.
Unfortunately, it's like we're using Americans as guinea pigs. If anything does happen, God forbid, it's going to be, it's going to be bad. You know what I mean?
The American Trucking Association says there are between 300 and 500,000 long-haul drivers in the U.S. Mahoya Assad says he's worried, not only about what self-driving trucks will mean for his livelihood, but about the whole idea of autonomous vehicles. How do you feel about that?
I'm not really for that. I don't think it's a good idea.
I was wondering about the job part of it. That must concern you.
Yeah, because then, they no longer need truck drivers. If a truck could drive itself, park itself, go from A to B by itself, what's the point of us humans, And
what would you end up doing?
I don't know.
It's very smooth. What we heard from people is that you really trust the system very quickly. It feels like, it's a human really driving.
Raquel Ertasin, the president of Wabi, knows being a leader in self-driving trucks means convincing a lot of people the technology is safe, politicians, investors, and the public, especially when no type of vehicle, including a generative, AI-controlled semi-trailer, is without risk. Even if what you say is true, and it sounds logical to me, if there is an accident with a self-driving truck, you can imagine what the headlines are going to be. Does that scare you?
So one of the, I would say, difficulties of doing what we do is that sometimes humans expect perfection from machines, and they think that the machines will not be useful until they are perfect. So robots will not be perfect, but the robots are going to be much better than humans, and that's what we need to focus on. It's not in terms of we should not deploy them until they never made a mistake, and yes, they will be headlines, but it's important to understand that machines make different errors than humans, and that's okay so long as they are safer on average than a human.
Wabi expects to be the first company to have self-driving trucks on Texas highways without safety drivers later this year. Ertasin predicts in 3 years, there will be thousands. So as you saw, Wabi is based in Toronto. They hope to bring their trucks to Canada as well. That means getting over the regulatory hurdles from a province, but also making sure the trucks are able to handle, you guessed it, snow and ice. Next, the crash landing at Pearson Airport is bringing up traumatic memories from 20 years ago.
Realizing that we're crashing, feeling the heat of the fire on my face.
The survivor of an Air France crash offers advice to those who went through it last week. Toronto Pearson Airport says operations are back to normal nearly a week after that Delta flight crash landed and flipped on its roof. The crash triggered difficult memories for one survivor of a similar accident decades ago.
Anytime I see something like that, I kind of detach from watching the event. But when I went to read through some of the stories of what people experienced, it kind of brought me right back.
Lauren Langell was a passenger on Air France Flight 358 that crashed at Pearson back in 2005. Ellen Morrow caught up with her to see how she's coping today.
Drop it! Come on, get that phone away! Oh, that was just a plane crash. Oh my God!
So few people know what it's like to survive something like this.
There aren't a lot of experiences in life where you truly believe that this is going to be the end.
Lauren Langell is one of them.
It feels so far away, but it also feels like it was yesterday.
Lauren survived the Air France crash landing at Toronto Pearson Airport in 2005. The pilot overshot the runway, attempting to land in a powerful thunderstorm. Somehow, all 309 people on board lived. The Delta crash, also at Pearson, also an unlikely story of survival for all 76 passengers and 4 crew, brought back memories of that day.
Realizing that we're crashing, feeling the heat of the fire on my face. I'm losing my train of thought even talking about this.
How are you doing this week?
Anytime I see something like that, I kind of detach from watching the event, but when I went to read through some of the stories of what people experienced, it kind of brought me right back.
Lauren was just 15 years old at the time, returning from an idyllic summer in France.
The plane broke out in flames, black smoke. You couldn't see much.
Some relatives only found out she was alive after she appeared that night on the National.
All that you saw was orange. I had no idea what was going on until I left the plane. I just had the thought in my head that I'm going to be all right, and I started helping other people, and it was just amazing how everyone came together.
Her account so similar to those of the Delta survivors.
There was like a big fireball out this left side of the plane.
Everyone seemed like they were there to make sure we helped each other.
Still kind of taking it all in, and it doesn't really feel quite real.
I certainly feel for the people that went through the crash because they have a long journey ahead.
For Lauren, surviving the Air France crash made her feel invincible. She only realized the true trauma of that day years later.
Everyone survived. I should feel so grateful. And I really just tried to push it away.
Can you talk about the realization of the impact that day was still having on you years later and what that was like?
I've done a lot of work to overcome the PTSD that came with it. To be honest, a lot of therapy, a lot of years of therapy, but just walking around with that layer of fear that's kind of in your subconscious, it's come up unexpectedly. Anytime I smell burning rubber, my brain immediately goes back to that moment because that's one of the smells that was really prominent after the crash happened. Like if I'm near a car crash and there's burnt rubber, that brings up a lot of fear for me.
But Lauren has not let any of it hold her back from traveling the world. We spoke with her as she was getting ready for a trip to Costa Rica. What would you say about how you've been able to kind of not let that consume your life?
One of the things I did was I got on a plane pretty quickly after it happened. Other than having a bumpy landing, that might jolt me back, but I'm able to be pretty calm when I'm on planes.
Lauren hopes the same for the Delta survivors. I just wonder what you would say to people who were in the crash on Monday, who are just starting to begin to process what they went through as someone who went through something very similar 20 years ago, almost.
I completely detached from what was going on. I never talked about it in a way where I got to feel and experience the feelings that were going on because I told it more like a story. I just wanted to put this behind me, but I think I would have saved myself a lot of money and time and heartache if I had dove in to work through this earlier on. Even if this brings up discomfort for me in the short term, if anything I say can make someone feel like they're seen or heard, or they might get something out of it where it helps them to get help, I think it's worth it.
2 passengers from Monday's crash are suing Delta Airlines. Their claims were filed separately, but both allege negligence. Days after the crash, Delta offered passengers $30,000 US as compensation, saying that money comes with no strings attached. Coming up, from ugly duckling to silver screen starlet.
To go from being UK's ugliest dog to now best in world has been quite a wild ride.
This unpleasant-looking pooch wins a canine Oscar. Next, in our moment. This distinctive dog is Peggy, the runt of an accidental litter, adopted by a woman who simply felt bad for her. Peggy was crowned the UK's ugliest dog. But now, thanks to her starring role in the blockbuster film Deadpool and Wolverine, she's won the canine equivalent of an Oscar. And tonight, it's our moment.
Winning film is Deadpool and Wolverine, and the winner is Peggy!
Peggy was absolutely phenomenal in as much as she is a real presence on the screen.
Look at you! She's coming with us!
Not least because of her tongue.
Peggy has a tongue that, I don't know, looks like an old shoe. She's so sweet and so cute, but the tongue is revolting.
Not least because of her proximity to Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman.
She won the ugliest dog in the entire UK, and boy, she earned it.
She's definitely got star quality when it comes to the silver screen. Everyone loves Peggy.
We made it to 6th base.
To go from being UK's ugliest dog to now best in world has been quite a wild ride. Just want to say a huge thank you to everybody.
All is right in the world.
So Ryan Reynolds says that it took 8 weeks to train Peggy to jump up on him and lick his face. I don't know anything about teaching dogs tricks. I don't know if that's a long, it seems like a long time, but I don't know for sure whether it's a long time. And apparently smearing Ryan Reynolds' face with cheese and salmon paste was needed to help train Peggy for that role. Thank you for being with us. You can watch anywhere, anytime on the free CBC News app and subscribe to the National's YouTube channel. I'm Ian Hannah-Mansing in Vancouver. Good night.